All right, everybody, can you hear us?
Yes.
Excellent. So we're going to begin. Unfortunately, Zarmini cannot be in with us today, and Maria is stuck with a storm, and her internet isn't the best at this point. Maria Lukman, who is one of our last panelists left to enter. So I'll give the floor to you, Amin.
Okay, hi everybody. We're here as a post-show talk on Lal Jadoo and for our catalog launch. And Lal Jadoo was a show curated by me and Sara Pagganwala, which happened on the 15th of March, the Ides of March, in a semi-abandoned building on II Chandriga Road. There were about 65 works, and with Lal Jadoo, or Red Magic, not only did we want to include new works, but we wanted to include sort of like the history of performance works that have happened in Pakistan. So those works included works like by Salima and Jatoi, amongst many others. Since this is an informal dialogue, and I would like it to be informal and to have fun with it, what we'd like to do is start it off by perhaps each of the panelists, and we'd like to start with Salima ji first, to talk about how they feel about performance art and the history, the engagement with performance art. So I'd like to begin with Salima, and if you could take the floor and to speak a little to us, I'd be super grateful. I can't hear.
Salima, could you unmute yourself, please?
Okay. I'm very much the dinosaur here, and I'm conscious of the fact that I'm the dinosaur. And it really, I'm amazed at the way in which this art form has moved from where it was, when I was, when I was interested in something called mime. And it has moved to across many dimensions, many ways of interpreting movement, sound, the intensity of content. And the form has really developed to a place where I think I am deeply convinced that there is now in Pakistan a body of work which, I mean, it's a very varied quality, but I think there is a lot of work which is deeply moving and really represents so much of what we experience, so much that we recognize, and so much which is us. Yes, I was interested as a student, as a young student, when I was in England. I signed up for a course in mime, theater, blah, blah. Also looked at the work of the great people like Marcel Marceau. And that convinced me that, this was something that was not theater. It was not film in the sense that, and it was in a class of its own, in a grouping of its own. And that encouraged me when I was a young teacher at NCA to encourage mime groups, to look at the possibilities. And of course,
what?
And you make my hair.
Need what?
You make my hair.
So
Beautiful.
no, I would say like this is my spot.
I'm so sorry.
Mute them.
Can I please ask you all to be muted?
Mute them.
You muted.
Sorry, Salima. Yes, go for it.
not at all. You make it sound as though the government of Pakistan is hosting this.
Honey, this is PTV. Welcome.
So, television actually gave us the opportunity way back in '72 to try out various aspects of things that move beyond theater and beyond, simple satire, and could be interpreted as things on their own. Unfortunately, much of that work has not survived. when Ziaul Haq took over, all of our programs were put into a steel trunk and done away with. What survived was actually what the engineers of PTV in Lahore used to like to watch at night. So they saved a few of the tapes to entertain themselves while they were, editing other programs. That is all that we have left of almost 4 years of work. Some of it was the most interesting, I think, that we ever did. But that's all history. What interests me now, really, is to see the use of the body, to see the use of elements which go beyond the body, elements which are mute as simply as presences in our lives, in our environment. And they come to life through the medium who's the artist. And that I find is the most exciting part of what I'm witnessing today. And I really, I'm inspired by a lot of the work that I see. I think a lot of people are still struggling with the idea of performance, which is fine. It's a new way of working. But the fact that we have so much interest in it, and because of what you did also, I think that it drew attention from a lot of people who perhaps wouldn't have gone there with their work. So that, it was wonderful to see in the catalog also names and people who felt convinced that this was a possible way in which they could think of their practice. There are people whose work I was familiar with, like Natasha and and so on. But it's been very rewarding, speaking for myself. And I really am tremendously happy that you stuck your necks out. Your joint
Thank you.
necks out.
Two. Her neck is better than mine.
Thank you so much.
And also thank you, Salima, because you were inspirational for me, on a personal level. And without people like you, I don't think cannot exist in a vacuum, Salima ji. So thank you so much for being a precursor to what we have now. Thank you so much for being here and existing. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And shall we go on to our next panelist now?
Yes.
Let's go.
Natasha,
Jozi.
Hi guys, my name is Natasha, Jozi, whom people that I haven't met before. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm an artist. Thank you so much, Amin and Sara. I think Sara, you and I, we sort of met or sort of ran into each other whenever I had those very brief 1 or 2 day trips to Karachi. Whenever I had the good fortune to work with Sameera in her projects, which was
Of course, yes.
very early on, very. I think that for me now it feels like ancient history. So much has happened since then. But I think that I've been working and really just sort of my blood and sweat and life and everything that I am is around and about performance art, and something that I don't really think of it as something that I do. I think it is something that I am. And I think as an artist, you are thinking about your work. It's not something that you can just switch off. And engaging with this medium has been sort of a twofold thing for me, because I started off with as an artist, and I started to perform after I did my master's and I came back to Pakistan. So I'm originally from Islamabad. It is a smaller city, and I was struggling a lot with, where do I take my work, and who do I, talk to, and what is all happening? Have I made a mistake? What am I bringing my work in a market where it's not necessarily about an experience, or it's something that is ephemeral, something that you just experience firsthand and it just vanishes, probably doesn't have as much value as perhaps something that you can acquire. And since then, it's sort of been a journey of trying to create a space for my own work. But then soon I realized that I don't think that that's perhaps enough. And that's where, when I started this initiative in Lahore. I moved to Lahore a couple of years ago, and I was like, okay, let's just bring a couple of people, and literally from my own pockets, we just sort of, kehte na, jama karke, and we just sort of started something, and literally commando actions. We would go in different parts of Lahore, knowing that we perhaps can't be here, or police scanning se pehle we're just gonna do our performance over here, 30 minutes performance, just do it. If someone's watching, just act as if we're just here, we're walking in the park. We're just normal people. We belong here, we belong here, and just quickly do a performance. So many times we had to, in the middle of a performance, we had to stall, or we had to pick up our cameras and literally run away because a security guard was coming or someone was coming, because you need all of those parchas to show that we are permitted. And I think that another thing that I experienced through this, through working with House, is that the fact that with performance art there is so much room for expression beyond exclusivity of going to an art school. And I got to work with so many artists, or I would say creative minds, who do not have an academic understanding of fine arts, or have not gone to an art school, and are coming from all different parts. And one of the workshops that we did in-house was basically 3 people came from Karachi, from IBA, and from LUMS, and we were all just sort of coming together and talking about the body and how do we experience it. And I think that the beauty of performance art is that it sort of brings it to it's such a raw medium. Everything is so raw. Everything is about human experience. Everything is about the materials that you have in front of you, and you engage with it on a very visceral, on a very I think an emotional level. You get to feel things that perhaps you cannot even know what you intended of doing well before you were planning a performance. So I think that my experiences in terms of performativity and performance art have allowed me to engage with people that perhaps I might not, because we very much get sucked into the gallery system and institutions, and I think that for me that has really taken me and opened up so many more spaces for me, and reach out to so many more interesting people. For me it has been quite challenging, but at the same time, I think jo bhi maine learn karte hain aap art school mein, that's just completely is out the window. Performance art challenges everything. I think it challenges everything, because you can't, that bhai, I know I can't sell this, right? So that's point A. We know this. So okay, what do we do here? What do we do from here? And I think that is something interesting. But I would say though, but I don't think that this is the end of it. I think that conversation through, Amin, what you were doing in Karachi and the works that we're doing, I think that the conversation is now starting about this medium. And I don't think that it should end over here. How do we take this forward, and what to do with this now in terms of an art form, and not in terms of an exotic space of performance art. But I think now we've come so far, as Ma'am Hashmi said, enough portfolio, enough work has now been, we've been doing it for a while, that now we can engage with it as a serious art form and not look at it as an exotic space, which, perhaps is only for the very few. But I think that is something that everyone can engage with. So I think that that's something that I'm very much looking forward to seeing. Now what's next? We've come here, that was a journey. Now from here forward, how do we go from here?
Right, step by step. But I think this sort of thing, talk is really important, just to bring together people.
For sure.
To just chit chat, and spew it out, about attitudes and perspectives about it.
Yeah, and also just like how Natasha is saying, it's not just for that 1%, because we've come to a point where now you can see all facets of life as well, and how you were mentioning that it's not only for those who have specifically studied fine art or performance art, but I think in a lot of the exhibitions that Amin and I have done as well, we try and get people across the borders who are not
exactly,
who are not per se artists, And it's something that I think everybody can engage with, and it's something that's very innate. It's just not looking at it from that canon, but now being able to do so, because it is now sort of slowly coming into everyday life as well.
And it's also wonderful because it's quite approachable, I think. It's very like, watching, I still remember Salima shows. I mean, it's very approachable, and you can communicate things in a kind of insidious, subversive kind of way. You can, through humor, or, it's a great vehicle for communication.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, please go ahead. I can go on, so I can go on.
Oh, you can go on,
yes,
sweetheart.
please.
Oh, please go on. No, seriously.
Yes.
ये तो कोई time limit नहीं है.
And this is also for everyone else. Whenever you feel like you want to interject or want to say something, contribute, by all means, please do so.
Yeah, please do. Everybody's open to sit. Yeah, it's open. It's an open
So,
forum.
hi guys. Hi Sara. Hi. Amin. This is, I just woke up. It's like 9 something in Miami. So
Oh my God,
great to
that's
see all of your
glamorous.
faces. I see some red. Yeah, and like
I went to the
God bless
hairdresser.
all of you.
This took hours.
I just woke up. Half of my eyes are closed. I'm loving this. So this is such a breath of fresh air. In my isolation, as you know, Florida cases are like going crazy. So I think for me, one thing I have been thinking a lot about in terms of performance, like making an intention of performance and making, right now, this is what I have been intentionally doing. I came here for an artist residency. Like every time I'm doing anything, I am thinking of putting my intention of a performance with every day thing. Like when I eat, I'm like, this is a performance. And then making the performance out of everything that I do, from talking to a friend, from changing my clothes, from going for a walk, and then a life and art and performance, and then kind of seeing it from that visual. Like, does performance always need an audience, or can you be performing with an intention and thinking of art as a way of life?
What do you think, Natasha? You want to answer that?
I see. Okay, so I would have to. Okay, I'll engage in this conversation as an artist, and I would, because I think immediately and I always have to like switch off and like, because my curatorial, is a very different. And then when I'm working as an artist, I think about performance in a particular way. I would say that there is a danger in that, because I see that where body is performance. I understand that, but then there is also intention. And if there is the lack thereof intention, then then when we say everything is art, then nothing is art.
Sure.
And I think that is where I think when you say everything is everything, then there's nothing. Everything is everything. And I feel that in performance, in my experience, there is that switch as an artist that comes, that there's a switch of I'm no longer Natasha. The moment I am going to go into this space of performance, I'm no longer Natasha. Perhaps I'm no longer a physical body that experiences its physical body in everyday life. Perhaps my tolerance to pain increases. Perhaps my resilience increases. Perhaps my courage increases. The shift that happens the moment you change your mind and you engage with that space of doing and starting a performance, that is a huge, it's kind of like a mental, you're sort of transporting yourself into another space and you're performing. And I see that there is an urgency to create everydayness into performance and performativity. But I also feel there is an importance to see, and it's important to understand the intention of that moment and the significance of everyday materials and what that could perhaps signify. Because yes, drinking a glass of water is drinking a glass of water. But when you're drinking a glass of water in a performative act, what are you trying to say? And when I'm teaching or when we're doing workshops, this is that conversation of that shift, that fabric is no longer fabric. Sitting is no longer sitting. Everything is, there's a shift that happens. And I think as an artist, I feel the responsibility to engage with my materials, which whatever those would be, even if it's just my body. If we're looking at Vito Conti's work where he's sort of like biting himself and he's always like this transgressive sort of an act where he's mutilating his own body. But then the material, which is his own body, what are the conversations that it's sparking? I think that is, for me, very, very important. And even if I am
Natasha, I agree with you 100%. But as I mentioned earlier in my comment, that when you do something, the key word is intention. I am not trying to diminish as an artist. That's the last thing I would want to do. But what I am saying is that I have been thinking a lot about doing things and slowing things down because of after the COVID. As a New York-based artist, everything was so fast-paced, and having to slow things and enjoying my cup of tea with an intention and enjoying every sip of it with the intention of a shift in mind is what I'm experimenting and what I've been thinking about. And I'm wondering, if we do things, and I'm not saying everything it's a fit for everybody, but for me, I have been trying to experiment with this notion of art and life, and then putting intention. And when I do put that intention with or without the audience, it has been a very interesting shift for me personally. I'm talking about for me personally. Either it's eating my food and cutting the vegetables, the vegetables of all different colors, and then putting them in my mouth, and then that goes in my mouth, in my stomach, and out, and the whole cycle. So everything, intentionality of it is something that I am really, really interested in, and I agree with all of what you have said. But for me, I'm sharing from my personal experience. It has been an interesting shift.
Wonderful, Kinza. Salima, out of curiosity, how do you feel about this?
You're on mute, Salima.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I just put my comment there, which people can read.
Okay.
And, which is really
There is a
one's work
Yeah.
as an artist is what consumes one.
Right.
And yes, one can find new ways of really dealing with the experience, as Kinza has said.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree that there is a kind of fine line between living one's life and creating one's work.
Right.
It becomes, it is complex.
Yes.
In this form that we are talking about, performance art. It is more complicated because, the intangibles and the tangibles are kind of scrambled, if you like.
Yeah.
So therefore, creating that order, which is the work,
Right.
is the challenge.
Yes.
And but of course, that's just an outsider's comment.
Well, insider, outsider, I would have to say. Sorry. Let's move on to
the next panelist.
Yes.
Just a quick thing that I also wanted to add on that, though, was I suppose it's also a frame of mind that you're in as well. So, like, when the happenings happened, and Adeline Capper says, real life and art should be kept as fluid as possible. And it's sort of just letting this other life take over what might be real life. And then it begs the question, what is art and what isn't art? And who actually dictates what either or are?
Bugs Bunny.
Okay.
Okay.
Shall we go on to?
Let's go to a show.
Yeah, so just talking about what Natasha and Kinza just said, I think I personally feel that the state of our being is performance itself, because the way we do things in our normal, functional life is like a performance itself. So Marina Abramovic puts it very nicely where she says the difference between theater and performance is that in theater you get to rehearse your performance. So in performance art, it's just like a one-time thing.
One night stand. बहुत अच्छा है. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go on to Ambareen Thompson and then Sameera Raja, both who are part of IPAF, the International Public Art Festival, and have greatly supported all the madness that we have done. So thank you very much to both of you. Ambareen?
Ambareen?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, as probably the most layman of this very esteemed panel, my own introduction to performing art was performance art was at a show a few years ago at the Canvas Gallery, and
curated by Sara Pagganwala.
Curated by Sara Pagganwala, yes, and it left me quite fascinated because that was frankly my first experience. We then, with yourself, Amin, and Zarmeena Shah and Sara, we put up the Quantum City last year at the KPT. And I think what fascinated me most was the connection that performers, the performance itself, and those who were witnessing those performances, the dynamism, the energy that was all around. I mean, frankly, and we've spoken about this many times, that a lot of the visual art is unfortunately restricted to galleries, to white spaces. Our ordinary people do not have access or do not feel comfortable going to those. We at IIM Karachi are always committed to bringing art out to the people, and hence the walls, the mural, whatever else we can do. So bringing performance art to the ordinary person, I think that has been something that we are very proud of. Last year, when those performances were happening at the KPT, I saw some people pull up in a rickshaw. I saw the guards. I saw just ordinary people walking off the street and just enjoying the performances and asking questions. And it was interesting talking to some of them because their interpretations of it were wildly different from what some of us were thinking or feeling. And that's a result of our conditioning. They were very fascinating. There was a performance that stood out because I heard a few very interesting comments. I forget the name of the artist, but do you remember the umbrellas?
Yes, Muzammil, right here.
Muzammil.
Yeah.
And people were very, and when you explain, and some people asked why they were doing that, and it was very interesting to get some of the feedback. So it is, I think performance art is here. It is here to stay. My only wish, and as long as I'm with IIM Karachi or whatever else I do, would be to bring as much of this as we can to public spaces, to the general public, not just to, I'm always against preaching to the choir. We have access, when we travel, when we all of us in this panel, we have access to it. But I think the real challenge and the real effort should be to bring it out into the streets. We used to have performing arts, and again, they faced a battle, but they made a huge impact, and there's no reasons why performance art shouldn't do that. So that's where we are at with IIM Karachi, and that's my own. That will be my effort in the years to come. Also, I was very sorry that COVID happened for Lal Jadoo. But that you managed to pull off a show.
Yeah, it dictated its own life after that, I suppose.
Exactly. And yet, during the little time that you had a performance going out on the street, the Shima Karmani troupe, you suddenly stopped traffic. You stopped traffic. We in fact had to move it away because it was creating a safety hazard. Because people just stopped in the street to see what it was. They began to question what it was. So as Salima ji said, We have been through the times of Zia-ul Haq where, performances, free thought, critique was taboo. We are not in a dissimilar time at this juncture in our lives, perhaps worse. But I think with performance art, the beauty is that because a lot of these people don't quite understand it yet, you can say a lot and get away with it. And so more power to you guys.
Thank you so much, Ambareen, and thank you so much for your support. Another person who's been incredibly supportive of both Sara and me is Miss Sameera Raja, who people love and fear. And I would really like Sameera Raja to come on board, girl. Sameera Jan.
Guys, who fears me? But
I fear you, little girl.
But yeah, as far as performance art is concerned, I think it's here to stay. I think a lot of it comes from my background from NCA. When Mrs. Hashmi was mentioning mime, I was thinking back to those mime times, the mime club. I was thinking about the protests during when I was at NCA, which was Zia-ul Haq's regime, and how our protests were actually like performance art. And because Ambareen just said, that people don't understand. So you actually get a lot of things done when people don't understand. And so I always believe that art should remain the way it is, under the radar, so that we can have leeway and have freedom to do a lot of things that we would otherwise not be able to do. Having said that, having done a number of shows in the last decade or so within the so-called white walls of the gallery, I do believe that the power lies with the masses. And hence, we branded Canvas, or myself, branded with IPAF, to bring art to the local population, to the masses, to have it out on the streets so that a person who does not have access to art otherwise would be able to see it and see what their reaction is, because I think some of the most honest and interesting observations come from there. So having worked with both Sara and yourself extensively over the last decade or so, and Natasha and Muhammad Ali and so many other artists who are performance artists who have consistently been working, it's really a pleasure to have them within the gallery space, see how people react, and then have them outside where also people react differently. Also, I think what is interesting is the cross-disciplinary, like Sara was mentioning, that there were so many different people that you can engage in performance art, as opposed to when it becomes a purely visual art structure. So you have all creatives. And I think going forward, that's really important. Those bifurcations or those boundaries need to be removed, because anybody who's a creative can actually use their body as the medium and express themselves, which is, I think, one of the strongest points of performance art. I think I also have an ulterior motive in promoting performance art, which is that galleries, for a lack of understanding, are always termed commercial. And I want to break that barrier. I want people to understand that every gallery does not just have a commercial aspect in mind, because we do consistently put our money where our mouth is and do a lot of non-commercial things, and performance art is one of them.
And you do.
Whereas we do, but
And
that's what everybody needs to do. It's putting your money where your mouth is and doing something which is because you believe in it. You don't think about the commercial aspect, you do it because you believe in it. And I think that's really interesting, because in all these years, I've seen how it's taken off, how people ridiculed it earlier, or how they would roll up their eyes and say, what the hell is this all about? And then, you know, over time now, people are really excited seeing it. So that's, I think for me, all those things are all positive. These are all things that I would like to being and engaging more and more people. And I think all of you guys are contributing. I think Amin and Sara, you guys make a fantastic duo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
out the most fabulous catalog this time. It's really worthy of a read, and it's wonderful. And to compile everything together, I think Natasha and her trio in Lahore, the fact that she's actually moved from Islamabad to Lahore to come up with all of this is really wonderful. I think everybody, all of us, whether it's IPAC, whether it's Mrs. Hashmi, there's so many people, and all of them have been contributing in their own ways. And I think it's just wonderful that everybody can get together and speak about it on one platform. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Sameera. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to pass the floor over to Sara to talk about her experience in performance art. Go for it, my co-curator.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I mean, like a lot of you guys have been mentioning, performance art has not been the easiest, I suppose, journey to take, like Natasha was mentioning earlier as well. But fruitful nevertheless, and we've come through a really great journey. Having said that, yes, there are a lot of problems that we do face, and that would be something that I would want to discuss with all of you, and also see if you guys would have anything to contribute towards there as well. Like say, for example, having to select performance art as a career option is not the easiest ones to do so, because there's not a lot of funding involved there. I mean, let alone for just art, for the art scene, but performance art in itself at all. And there are multiple issues that arise from there. And a lot of time it's taking your passion through forth and wanting to do what it is that you want to do. I'm not sure what you guys feel about it, but I feel like we are slowly booming there, and it's slow but successful boom, but still very few supporters in the process of it. And not just because I love Amin so much or I work with him so much, but there's very few people like him who are actually supporting it. And we had the show, and all of you guys have been great support. Sameera with letting me do my first debut show for performance art. Amin for taking me under his wing ever since I came back and showing me the ropes of things. But I wish that a lot of more people. I suppose it's a slow journey, but I'm just hoping that people do sort of understand it and take it for what it's worth, and take that time and effort to regard it as a solid movement within the arts as well, not just from the Western canon, but from our canon as well. And with the amount of shows that we're churning out, there's always been an urgency to be able to do these shows for a certain reason, because as Amin says at our core, it's a moment in time, and that urgency that arises from that to be able to do something in that time, because it has to be done just to show everyone what is actually going on, and hopefully sort of like also Sameera said, I mean, this is the time that you can do a lot of things without being under the radar and being caught, and also like how Natasha was saying, but also taking that and being able to look at that in hindsight to see the development of it. And it's great, when we speak to Salima ji and all of you guys, to see the process of what it has already gone through, and now seeing what it is further going through. And just to be a part of it in a time like this, I think is integral, and it's this adrenaline rush that comes through as well. So yeah, what about you, Amin?
Okay. Hi. Hi. Hello. Hello, everybody. I'm going to be super quick, and then we're going to open up the floor to everybody. My history with performance started in the 90s. I came back, the plane had exploded, and there was this great energy in the air. And I used to make jewelry, lots and lots of jewelry. And at that time, I would be sticking my shit onto models on the catwalk format. And then finally, I got my own show, which was called Alchemy. And then I introduced each section with a performance work, and I used the catwalk format. You have to understand, the 90s were a very experimental time in Pakistani fashion. Sort of the format hadn't been created. And when things are new, things are beginning, there's a great electricity in the air. And it was really wide open for experimentation and all kinds of shit. So I used that opportunity to stick in performative works into that kind of format. And that began my sort of interest in performance art. And it continued since then. In 2017, I was the chief curator of the Karachi Biennale. Performance art was very much part of our agenda. Sara Pagganwala oversaw that section of the Biennale. And it really fascinates me because, again, it's guerrilla. I mean, my day job is being an object maker. So I work in copper and bronze, which is incredibly permanent. But there's an impermanence to performance where you can go ahead, and there's a sort of like guerrilla action thing that happens, that a lot of things can be expressed and put forth. And because it's ephemeral, it can just kind of slip under the radar. And anyway, that's all I have to say. So I'd like to open up the floor to everybody about comments, whatever anybody would like to say. Please talk, guys.
Amin, I have a question.
I'm a virgin.
So, I was just wondering, you know, with the reality of COVID, we may be coming out of it, but I think it'll be some time before people feel comfortable enough to engage in the same manner. Now, with visual art, of course, you know, few people go in at a time, and it's more controllable in a gallery or in a space. What do you think will happen with performance art if this COVID situation remains? Because a lot of artists enjoy it's all about also engaging with the audience.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like me, Sara, and Adam Fahim Majid curated a show on performance, which was just on the net. It was a virtual show. And but you didn't get that flavor. I mean, that's what was heartbreaking about Lal Jadoo. Was for the first time in my life, I was telling people, do not come to the show. And it's usually you're begging people, and you want people from across the board. I just don't want the art, you know, going audience, the art gallery going audience of 20 people. The whole idea is, to engage people, to bring people into your realm. And yes, it's a strange time for us all.
Ambareen, can you hear us?
Ambareen, can you hear us?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Yeah, here's to hoping for vaccinations, for sensibility, and
inshallah, as we say in Pakistan. There's a big inshallah with a capital I.
Normal, but yeah, I can't say back to normal, but at least let's hope some semblance of the life we had, the good parts of the life we had, come back.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Hi, Osama.
Hello, guys. How are you all?
Very well. This is Osama Aryan, who's a young filmmaker who worked for Lal Jadoo and did a work for us called Babylon.
It was great working for Lal Jadoo. And hello, everyone. Hope you're all great. So yeah, I mean, that was my first show, like first performance arts show, and I was thrilled. I was really, at first I was also kind of nervous, but then I just let it go. And even like, because I was just performing without music, and so I did not have any kind of distraction to distract myself with from the people who were looking around.
There were no
checking
people.
the art. Yeah.
Submerged.
Actually, there were a few, but not as many.
Salima, you would like to say something? Like... Salima Ji.
You're mute.
Yeah. No, I don't want to take up time because.
No, you're not taking up. This is an informal conversation.
Oh yes.
Although I got dressed up. Yeah.
That's why I typed it all out.
No, but it's nice to hear your voice, Yar.
No, it's just that I think that there have been moments which we have yet to collate.
Okay.
I was thinking of the time when PNCA called me. I think it was late 80s, early 90s, and they said, "Ye performance art kya hota hai?" So that we have been that I think it was Khalid Said, but was a chairperson, was a DG then. So he said, "Ki kiska koi dance ke saath koi ताल्लुक hai?" So I said, "No, it's a genre, it's a new genre." And they said, "Ki because we have an invitation, I think it was from Japan or someplace, to send a performance artist." I've forgotten the country. So I immediately thought of Nilüfer Akmut, who was at that time in England, and she'd been part of a show that I curated. And she did a very powerful performance there. And so I asked them to find her and to nominate her. And, you know, it became for them quite an eye-opener because A, they didn't know what the hell they were dealing with. And secondly, officially at least, they recognize that there is something called performance art. And this is way, way, way before, you know, poor Natasha Jozi had to deal with.
Well, she was born yesterday.
So they have been these quirky moments, which are, you know, there within our histories. And yes, when Sameera was saying that, you know, the protests on the streets during particular moments in our history have been like performances, yes, because we had to sometimes make a run for it. And this happened a lot during Zia's time because we took our performances out onto the street. We did street theater. Ajoka did it, we did it. And the whole idea was that, okay, you have, in a total time of silence, there has to be some intervention.
Right.
And like you have done now, I think, you know, it reminded me so much of moments in which intervention was needed. And artists, most often, like poets, are the people who can do that intervention. And I agree with Ambareen that right now is the time when there is the sounds of silence are absolutely all around us. I think this is a time when perhaps this is the art form that we should all look at. And there are going to be no perfect situations in which will be set up for us to do it in. I think we have to make our situations, and I think we have to simply realize that this is a genre which lends itself to the impromptu situation which we can create and with which we can engage with people. Yes, with COVID around, it's difficult right now, but hopefully COVID will let us breathe again. And I think in the meantime, you know, as Ahmed Faraz once asked my father कि जब लिख नहीं सकते तो क्या करें, inspiration है क्या? So he said कि आप ना अपना pen जो है वो तराशा करो, get it ready. So this is a time for preparation, preparation for interventions through this medium. And I think it is absolutely perfect for the times that we are going through.
Thank you, Salima.
Thank you.
I would like to, Imad has joined our conversation. Imad is an artist who is repeatedly engaged with performance art. Imad, are you here somewhere in the net?
I am. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
We can hear you and we can see you, girl. You have such good teeth, yeah. G.
You know, in my experience of working with you, I have really seen an evolution of performance. The way it is done in Pakistan, it's very different. Our audiences are very different. And I think the way we curate performances for Pakistani audiences must take into account the kind of things that they are accustomed to in our own personal history, the history of South Asia, the history of media and television in South Asia. And I think most of our performances are informed by those practices and those things that we have consumed. I remember watching PTV dramas, and I'm rewatching some of them. I'm watching Uncle Urfi these days. And it's just so enjoyable for me, and to kind of relocate myself within that context and to gear my performance towards it. I'm sure you remember when you were doing Pakistan's radioactive decade, I was really
Yes.
interested in Rani's Umrao Janada and
Yes.
her dance, and I reenacted that. So it was just a really beautiful experience for me to be able to do that, and again to reconnect with my roots through performance art. So thank you for the
Well, thank you,
opportunity.
Imad. And I have to say, for the container show, Imad came out, stood on top of a container, and gave this sort of political monologue, combining speeches of Miss Bhutto, former Miss Bhutto, and and Charlie Chaplin, and a huge crowd of people gathered beneath him, and there was a lot of improv to that speech of his, and that speech went on for 2 hours, and we had the enormous varied crowd underneath you, Imad, listening to every word you said.
No, that was
God help them.
amazing. No, it was really amazing, and I remember it was so exhausting for me because I had never done a live performance like that on top of a container for 2.5 hours straight. And I remember at the after party, I started crying because I was just so tired and exhausted. But just the emotions that I felt during the speech and afterwards were really important for the work that I was doing.
Well, that's one thing Natasha Jozi, I hope you're still around, mentioned but quite eloquently in her essay, is the kind of transcendence and going into the other zone. When you are in another zone. It's kind of like a thing.
It takes over.
It takes you over. Natasha, are you still around?
Yeah,
I
I'm
do
here.
not trust the net. Oh my God, you are. Hi.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't catch the question, sorry.
It wasn't really a question. I was just talking about your essay that you wrote for Lal Jadoo and how, the process of, going into a zone, where you go into a zone.
I think I wrote that essay in some zone as well. I think when I'm writing, I also more than performance art, I'm probably addicted to some sort of a drug that's,
मुझे भी दे दो तो पीपी पीपी दवाई दे दो
सही बात है अंदर की बात है ये तो हम वैसे परफॉर्मेंस आर्ट करते रहते हैं अंदर में तो नशा है जो but yeah, I think transcendence is definitely as Ahmad was just talking about, that emotional outburst that he experienced after the performance. I think that probably also happens because there is this sort of like the moment you just I was talking earlier about going into a certain state of mind. I think the moment you come back to and start to talk to people. I remember there was a show that I did in Lahore in Taseer Gallery mein. It was a smaller space, and so there were a lot of people. Very difficult to sort of see where the performance was ending and where the visitors and audience was standing. But I remember that there was constantly this sort of need to engage, and people were talking to me and trying to talk to me, but then some of them were getting annoyed because I wasn't responding to them, and they thought that I was being rude. And they were sort of navigating you.
Yes.
And then the other being, whoever that being is, and that's what I talk about, and that's something that I've been researching on. The modes of a performative body, the modalities of a performance body, as I wrote in the essay as well. Which is sort of I think it's my research-based practice. I don't know, art-based research, whatever. I think it's all together mumbled and jumbled because I think during a performance, and all of the performance artists that have, and you as well, Amin, and you, Sara, as well, how to, because when I was writing this essay, I was like, how can I write about that happens when I'm performing? How can I put that in words in a way, not making it sound too, I don't know, I want it to be approachable. I want it to be approachable.
Communicate.
That you can read it, exactly.
Right.
And if who doesn't even perform, read it and then to understand. And I think that was perhaps my intention in trying to write that essay of trying to authentically engage with that sort of space, that, you know, the performative space of the body. Or both the jeeb, like it's really, I mean, I think you really have to be mad.
You do. Agreed. Agreed.
But honestly, I don't have an answer.
Honey, you're not going to be a millionaire through this.
Of course. Pretty, you know, paise kamane ke liye ways and means, and, you know, like, acha, okay, how can I monetize my being? But I think that you have to be crazy, really crazy to engage with this. And I think that it's in that madness that you get the intoxication. And I think it's in that madness of being in that headspace, of being in that space that you, I don't know, you get to get some questions, or you get some answers. And I think that art form becomes more than an art form. And it's no longer, it's not just art. And I think it perhaps performance takes art a step further. And I don't know what that is, but it is not just art. It is not just for experience. It is perhaps about reflection. It's about, I don't know. It's sort of like, and that's probably my challenge with the essay as well, of trying to find and trying to give these heads, this state of your mind a term or terminology of like what happens. But I think that performativity and performance art, and also the courage, it's not, I think you really need courage to allow yourself, without any security or nobody, like, I don't know about you guys, but when you're curating a show, like, I talk to my artists and I'm like, yeah, just think about the worst that can happen, because I don't know if I'll be able to come and save you at that moment. I don't know what is going to happen, especially when you're performing on the streets. Like, you don't know, especially in Pakistan. So you have to be like really mad and really, really brave to agree to stand in front of like 100 strangers and really almost being naked and just doing
strip yourself.
Strip yourself and being because you're not hiding away behind your character, your person, you know, who you are. You're not hiding, you're just being there. And I think that is really crazy, and I think that's beautiful at the same time.
Miri Jan, that's so eloquent. Is there anybody else who would like to say anything? This is an open forum, guys. Anybody else? Romana Saab. GGG's chat.
You know, I'm the other dinosaur, like
no, nobody's more dinosaur than me. You both are, no. I've been the dinosaur prize.
So, good morning to everyone from PC. Still early. You know, while all this talk is taking place, and of course, you know, Salima's and Shoaib Saab's fantastic contribution in terms of mime and, you know, in the 70s, what they did for PTV. But, and I'm also reminded of Salima, Rashida Ryan's, you know, those at the Jheel Park, the rings that he threw. I mean, one could say that was also performance art. And Gulgee Saab, I remember when I was a student at the CIAC, and this was perhaps late 60s or early 70s when he did his, it was like a performance, the live painting that he you know, created at the Arts Council. We had Sadiqain working day and night at Manzar Akbar Hall for, you know, preparing for his exhibition. But Sadiqain was another performance artist, I would say, and Bashir Mirza, who was also my teacher. I mean, when he was creating his Lonely Girl series at our school, and Bashir Mirza's, I feel his entire being, and I'm sure all of us, you know, having grown up with artists or having them as our teachers or as our peers. And what Natasha is saying, you have to be crazy, you have to be mad in the first place to become an artist. I think it's a given. And no, but I really commend Amin and Sara to have done all this body of work, and they continue to do. And I've been part of 3 of Amin's and Sara's projects. The Karachi, the first Biennale in which I was the Karachi woman, then I performed for Lal Jadoo, and lately here, from here, the Trojan horse. But so what Ambareen was saying, and I'm just thinking that, and what Salima also just said, that yes, and Salima, I see your note about the books, the 1,000 books you wrote somewhere here. Yes, did you delete that? Yeah, what they are doing. 10,000 books, 10,000 books, right. So I think that because it is a combination of theater and art and, you know, protest and it is subversive, I think this is the time when we need to speak out what they are doing to our education system. All this, you know, what they are trying to do. I think it's just absolutely appalling. And I think maybe perhaps everybody puts on their thinking caps, and something could be done even from our, you know, remote places, wherever we are, but putting something together on this subject, perhaps that would give out some message. I don't know. Yeah.
And one thing I'd like to say, and I want to bring it back to Lal Jadoo as well. Like, you know, there's a real problem of money, and it's, you know, like for Lal Jadoo, we had, you know, although Ambareen and Sameera both were extremely generous, we still didn't have any money to pay the artists for their work. So really commission the artists. And, you know, it's incredible that people put in months of work behind their independent projects. And, you know, and they get 2 hours of it, or, you know, of them to show the project to others. And, you know, in other countries, there's a system, people are funded for their works. And I mean, I remember some asking me, and we could just give them the bare minimum. And a lot of artists even, you know, didn't cover that, and they had to bring in their own money to pull off their works. And, you know, it's always heartbreaking, but also very inspiring that you know, the need to express, and it's there. And, you know, you always feel like such an, you know, miser when you're a curator saying, no, we don't have it. We just don't have the budget. But in spite of that, and I really would like to take this opportunity, both me and Sara, to thank all the artists, all of them, you know, all of them. Janice, you know, you guys came through and really made it happen. You know, you really, really made it happen.
Lost that one. The internet is gone.
Can you put it on your phone?
Yes.
My phone is on 4G.
So it kind of matched, you know, the Bhutto speech and being in Liari. I think it was just absolutely fantastic. Yeah, they're back.
Yes, you're back. Sorry. I mean, all I wanted to say is thank you
I did
to all the artists. Thank you. Yeah. G.
You know, I was just thinking, because I'm reading the chat simultaneously as well, and people are talking about censorship and subterfuge. Ma'am Salima Hashmi saying, you know, subterfuge is the artist's arsenal. I think it's a performance here. It becomes an act of resilience and protest as well, because you are surrounded by corrupt, you know, politicians and governments. And I'm reading George Orwell's 1984.
Good
Again.
talk right now.
I just finished reading it. Yeah.
And I can just relate. It just feels like all of those things, things about surveillance, things about monitoring people's movements. It just feels like it's all happening right now a lot more, especially with technology. And people over here performing and engaging in performance art is really a kind of a slap on everything that we're subjected to as people, and it's a retaliation. It's a protest, and at the same time, you're kind of letting your bodies be seen in a fashion that sort of saying that you own your own self and your own body and your own thoughts, and so you can go ahead and monitor and conduct surveillance, but this is what you'll get. You'll still get what we feel and what we want to express.
Yes, we're like, yes.
That's for sure.
Is there anybody else who'd like to add to this conversation? Is there anybody else watching?
So Sara and Amin, do you guys have anything else planned?
Yes,
planned?
Actually we do. Both me and Sara are kind of like attached right now. So we've got another project that's going to happen, inshallah, in Karachi. It's called If These Walls Could Talk. And it is about 77 minutes of new media, video, and it'll be projected onto a wall of the village restaurant. And people will be required to come in their car, so everybody's socially distanced. It's basically like a drive-in movie, except you watch art videos for 77 minutes and eat a kebab. If you're not, this is not for you, Romana, you're vegan. Tum vegan ho. Tumhare liye nahi hai. Tumhe koi kebab nahi denge.
Are you going to put it live?
DC has a Ravi kebab, and we do get kebab from there.
Faryal, I want to bring it to you. You were sitting right in the driveway of the show and doing a performance right in the midst. As soon as people entered, you were there. Would you like to say anything about it?
No, it was more of a, well, the space didn't really bother me because I was looking forward to the performance itself. And it was quite an experience for me because I remember, because I don't really rehearse my performance before it happens or anything. So
right.
Specifically for the Lal Jadoo performance, my performance became more of a part of the worship, like an act itself. So I kind of got lost in the moment of what I was doing, in the sense of the idea that I was, doing.
Right.
It was, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to come all the way from Islamabad and
Again, you paid for your own ticket, Faryal. I have to break that to you. So thank you. There's another person, Mariam Habib. Mariam, where are you? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can we see you, Mariam, or are you in hijab? Anyway, it doesn't matter. We can just read your name. Mariam, do you have anything to add? Mariam did a very interesting performance for her show. Do you want to talk about it, Mariam Habib? Mariam?
Yeah. I
why
did.
Don't we see you? Dikhao na apni chehre ko.
Yeah, but
Maine makeup pehna, dikhao.
I don't know how I look right now.
Oh, you look fantastic, girl.
Okay, well, I did, it was interesting because it was my first time doing a performance that wasn't kind of in the, safety of art school in the West where nobody knew me. So it was really, it was really quite exhilarating. And actually, because it was my first time, I was kind of relieved that there wouldn't be a audience there.
It was you're the one who cursed us, huh? Talk about Lal Jadoo. Lal Jadoo, huh?
I suppose. I don't know. I mean, obviously that was disappointing, but I was a bit relieved because I was like, oh, what are people going to say? So from that perspective, it was just really exhilarating to participate. It's the first time doing performance in Pakistan for me.
No,
So
it was a really fantastic work, Mariam. It was a fantastic work and really provocative, I thought.
Thank you.
Noor Ahmed, Noor Ahmed also was a curator, assistant curator of Karachi Biennale 2019. She worked with Mohammed Zishan, who was the chief curator, and was one of their sort of assistant curators. Sorry, I'm not being eloquent. No, talk. Say something really profound. Now.
This has been a fantastic. This has been a fantastic discussion. I actually wanted to share something regarding what you and Sara were saying about this being a moment in time regarding performance art.
Right.
Because my performance for Lal Jadoo was basically like a blind date where on social media and on dating apps, I was basically talking to people. And then I wanted to share the concept of performance art with them and meet them for the first time at Lal Jadoo. And since, an audience couldn't really come to Lal Jadoo, that sort of affected the performance, of course. But I thought it was a really interesting thing because there wasn't an audience, and then we moved to a largely online realm in the world of COVID. I've actually sustained a dialogue with most of these people. So then later,
Sorry, we lost you in the middle.
Sorry, I think I cut out for a moment. So I've been able to sustain a dialogue. So later, when Amin and Sara organized Trojan Donkey, I actually was able to share that as a performance art event taking place online with all of these people. And it's sort of been a sustained interest. And I think even though this concept was conceived of in a time before Corona, I think a lot of people there's a public interest in it for sure, in performance art and in using the body as a medium.
Well, thank you. That's pretty crazy that you still kept in touch with them.
And they were super interested,
and also
they were making comments on. Sorry, go on.
No, I just thought it was fascinating because your performance turned into you sort of sitting there by yourself, all alone, playing with the gifts that you brought everybody else, and became almost like a prophecy of what was to come later in these times. There's this great sense of isolation and just, where you just look inside.
Exactly.
Would anybody else like to add anything?
Yeah, I just had a second to gather my thoughts. I just wanted to add one more thing. When it comes to like explaining what performance art is to, most people, when I was procuring the oven and doing the wallpaper and all that, they were like, why are you doing this? Like, you make paintings. And I was like, nahin, ye drama or painting ke beech mein hai.
In between space. Is the Marina Abramovich in between space?
Yeah. And that really seemed to satisfy everyone.
There's also Zoya Karim Boy. Zoya, are you here? Miss Karim Boy, another person we can't see. Can we see you, Zoya?
Yes, you can. So once
there
again,
you are. Hi, Zoya.
Hi. Yes, I wasn't. Yes.
Yeah, would you like to add? What are your comments on performance art, its place in Pakistan, blah, blah, blah?
So I actually really loved how all the performances were exceptionally diverse, and with every project that every show that I've done that you've curated, everyone's just tried a different method of performance. Almost every show, because I remember a lot of these artists were in Quantum City, and then I've seen them again in Lal Jadoo, and I love the fact that they're just trying different ranges. So that's very exciting for this community.
Yes.
It's a massive teaching moment for the community itself, and particularly with.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so particularly with Lal Jadoo, it was something very different for me because you gave me an entire room. So I got to change the entire atmosphere of the room and kind of create an entire set, which was very new. It was almost like making a 3D painting. So I love playing around with different ideas. So
yeah, it was fantastic. It was extremely visual.
No, but it was also great to see Zoya's transformation as well. Because remember, for Mixtape, when she had that little bit when you were doing, your performance with Maha Minaj, and you guys had pretty much converted that tiny space that you had as well. And then to see you completely metamorphosize that space that you had for Lal Jadoo is just to show, like the way you had changed over the time as well. So that was pretty interesting too.
Well, things change and things also remain the same. I mean, there's a sort of a point of view. And I've always seen you in your performance works claiming a space, whether you're on top of a container and you kind of, you always like to claim a space. You're the space lady.
Thank you so much for that. I will use that somewhere.
Well, on that note, would anybody else like to add anything else?
One very small thing.
Yeah, please.
I think performance art is extremely powerful right now. And because we live in such uncertain times, and I don't think it's being used to its full potential. There are many ways of, going around it. We don't need to have funding. We can just do things which are more fluid. I think I'm harking back to my NCA days where you didn't need to do anything except just be there and do something. And maybe something like that would just happen spontaneously on the streets or anywhere else where you can just go make an impact. So it's not really thought out so much. And it just happens. You make that impact and you exit. So before anybody understands or can come to get you, you're already out.
It's like a guerrilla action.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what art should also do, right? And I don't think people are utilizing that because everything has become so structured and so contained that the fluidity of art or the means are kind of too confined. Maybe we need to break those confines. I mean, it's just a thought.
Sure. But yet, on the other hand, there has to be support for performance artists. I mean, I just remember just even asking, even for Lal Jadoo, there were a lot of artists from Lahore in Islamabad who could not afford to fly down. And it's fair enough because, because if you're a painter or an object maker, you get to sell the piece post-show. And at least you have an object or something made. But with the performance, you don't have that. And so again, I'm always amazed by whenever curating a show on performance about the generosity and the courage of the artists to come forth to give their narratives, and I know the amount of time and energy one expends. That's one thing people don't understand who have not done performance, is how much energy goes into and how much thought goes into something. Even if at that moment you're open to improvisation, you're open to things changing around you, but there's so much energy that you have to spend on that afterwards you really need to sort of like exhale, yeah.
No, yeah, but like everyone was saying, there's all that madness and that passion that was involved, because how Amin was also mentioning, we had people coming from all over by bus, by train, by flying, and we could not give them anything. They didn't have places to stay. Other people were accommodating them. We were accommodating them. It was insane. But the fact being is that they were so ardently passionate about what it was that they were doing and about what they wanted to do and say, that they made sure by hook or by crook that they got in here well before time. So hats off to them. I mean, I don't think we'd be able to make a lot of this possible
without that energy. And hats off to the Pakistani art scene, where you have that craziness. I mean, you have that craziness within our space of just making it happen, I mean, I remember Razan Kama are not on the chat, but they caught a bus from Islamabad, overnight bus, to just come down for those 2 days of Lal Jadoo. And that takes a lot. It really does take a lot. I can't hear.
Osama, we can't hear you.
Osama, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I was saying it really does. And like...
What does?
Yeah. That was awkward.
Don't worry about it. This is an informal conversation. Just be aware you have all the heavy hitters of the art scene watching you. No pressure.
Oh, okay.
No, but I mean, you can talk about a lot of things. Like that's hard to do in Pakistan. Sexuality and a lot of issues can come using performance that one is normally shy about talking.
Yeah, there was this one time when I was performing, and one of those people from the KFC, like, you know, there a lot of people from KFC.
I know, they're the only audience we had.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So as I was just dancing, and you know, since I didn't have any music around me, though there was a lot of music in the ambience, but I didn't have any. So I could hear people talking while they were walking down, and then I heard this one person saying astaghfirullah by looking at me, and that really just, you know, took me out of my place and my element. And I was like, okay, should I, like, you know, like, I wanted to continue, obviously, and I did, but then that one specific thing really distracted me, and it wasn't like you know, it just expressed the difference between and the mentality and the thought, like school of thoughts of different people who come up and like and who watch these things, and but they liked it. He was watching it. He was watching like all of the other pieces also, but he had this opinion about this.
Sure. No, that's what Natasha Jozi was saying earlier, is that it takes the courage it takes to put yourself out there. You know, Natasha, I don't know whether you're still here or left, but you know, the courage that you stick yourself out there takes a lot of courage.
And also a lot of times when such an incident does happen, it's in a sense you also know that you've succeeded, because if you manage to provoke any kind of reaction whatsoever, boom, you know, you have made a mark whatsoever. So think of it that
for sure. Yeah, even when she said, Natasha, when she said that we are like really we are putting ourselves out there, like originally when we are performing, and when we are not performing, we are just wearing a facade, you know, to like maybe like, you know, express to the world, but like hide our true selves from them. So when I was performing, I felt like myself. It was really freeing, really liberating.
Well, thank you for your wonderful performance, Sama.
Thank you for having me that day. It was great.
All right. On that note, we would like to thank everyone for being here today for this talk.
Thank you so much. We'd like to thank
you guys.
Salima Hashmi for agreeing to be part of the panel. We'd like to thank Natasha Jozi for coming on and bringing a perspective. We'd like to thank Ambareen Thompson for making IPAF happen. We'd like to thank Sameera Raja, who's been such a warrior. And so they're there and put her money where her mouth is. But most importantly, I would really like to thank me and Sara. Would really like to thank all the artists who really make these crazy things happen, and who put in all the time, the effort, the money, the energy into making our events happen. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Shukran, as they say in Saudi.
Thank you, guys.
Ciao, guys. We love you. We love you. We love you.
Love you.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.